Hello, everyone. Delighted to join you. My name's Alex, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the making of Mythwrecked Ambrosia Island, which is our second indie game. I believe you've just seen the video, so that will give everything a bit of context. And so, yeah, let's just jump straight in. So, start off with our indie studio is called Polygon Treehouse, and so I thought I'd give a bit of an overview about who we are. So we started professional games development back in 2002, not as Polygon Treehouse, actually as part of Sony PlayStation. So me and Tom, who founded the studio, we both left university. We studied it in Bournemouth at the National Centre for Computer Animation in the UK, and we got jobs at Sony Cambridge. And so we worked at Sony for about 15 years, working across 10 or 11 launched PlayStation titles, everything from Medieval on the PSP to many of the Killzone games. But what happened next was we went indie and we founded Polygon Treehouse. Our studio unfortunately got shut down about 6 years ago now, but we had to make a decision of did we want to go back into other big studios or it felt like we were at that stage in our lives when we wanted to do something that was quite personal to us. And so we decided to go indie because we really hated the idea of not having an answer to that question of can we do it or not? Can we make it work? And fortunately, so far so good. So the game on the right, Roki, is a game inspired by Scandinavian folklore that came out 2020, I believe, and it was our kind of first time making a whole game ourselves and focusing on the narrative and the story and the art. We're a very art-led studio, and that did really well for us. It's kind of a modern point-and-click adventure, but with 3D exploration and an emphasis on storytelling. And actually won loads of awards and got nominated for a couple of BAFTAs, which was great. And so next, Mythwrecked. So this is our second game, and as you can probably see by the two box art, there's definitely a continuation of the DNA and the kind of brand of our studio and as creatives, and that was something important for us that Polygon Treehouse itself as the studio has an identity. So hopefully, when you see one of our games, you'll be able to go, "That's one of theirs." So, what is Mythwrecked? So, in that, just a brief overview of what you're doing in the game. You play as a backpacker from the UK who's taking a much needed break from the strains of modern life and they're going around Europe and they're caught in a mysterious storm with lots of strange lights and they find themselves shipwrecked on a mysterious island of mythology. Hence, shipwrecked mythology, Mythwrecked. And throughout the game, you'll be meeting and befriending the islanders, and there's something quite special about them. And you're kind of helping to bring back their memories to help them and also to help you to be able to find a way home. And we've coined this term cozy adventure. So Roki was definitely inspired by um, those classic point and click games that we loved growing up. And we were asking the question with that game, what happens if we made a modern version of those games? Sometimes those games could be quite frustrating, quite hard. You get really stuck. And we tried to solve some of those issues with Roki, and Mythwrecked is then going a step further. And we really like this idea of a cozy adventure game. So basically, one where you and just really, really enjoy being in the space, the game world. It feels quite tangible, quite real. It's a space you enjoy, but it feels like quite a relaxing place to be, even if sometimes relaxing things aren't going on. And I think that this whole sense of space and is something that, and transporting the player somewhere with our games is something that's really important to us. And it's important to note that Mythwrecked and the setting and the whole idea behind the game was conceived during the first lockdowns of COVID. So I was stuck in a flat in Cambridge at the time. We'd since moved to Scotland, but it was quite cramped and it was like, right, we can't go anywhere. We can't see any of our friends. We can't see any of our family. And so dreaming of like going to an idyllic Greek island, exploring ancient ruins, meeting new people. I think there was definitely a lot of elements that came out of the confinements of COVID and like, okay, well these are the things that I'd really like to be doing at the moment. And again, with the emotional impact, that was something that we didn't know how. We worked really hard to make sure the story was good in Rurky. We didn't know how much of that would be perceived by the players, but actually when the game launched, all that stuff really rose to the surface and people really connected with the emotional impacts. When you're making a game, you can be quite close to it. Can be sometimes quite hard to see the bigger picture. So we worked really hard on that stuff, but we weren't quite sure on like a big scale how it would go down. So the emotional impacts of our game and the gods themselves are quite interesting, and they're all dealing with different problems, and something we'll get onto later, and maybe they'll be resonating with our lives, your lives, issues that people are facing today. And that brings us neatly onto this. So our gods, clearly, if you haven't already guessed, visually they're a really different take on the gods of Greek mythology. Obviously, the gods of Greek mythology have been in lots of films and games. So we wanted to do something quite playful. In our game, the gods, it's set in the present day, and the gods they've lost their memories, and they've been living on this island, and they've almost they've forgotten their identities, so they don't really remember who they are. And so the whole main gameplay of the game is you playing as Alex. You're finding lost memento items and giving them back, returning them to their owners to try and spark flashbacks, bring back a portion of their memory, so that so in finding these things by exploring the island, you can help them, the gods, recover their identities, and then the mystery, help solve the mystery of what happened to their memories in the first place, and also try and find a way for Alex to get back to her normal life. And in our take on the gods and exploring those memory flashbacks, one of the things that was really important is we want them to be relatable. So, like for example, Hephaestus in the game may is a master craftsman, a master of invention, but is also quite guilty of working too hard. I'm sure it's something that many people can relate to, of having to feel busy all the time, not feeling like you can take a break. So even though the gods are these magical beings, that we wanted the some of the issues that they're facing to be very relatable to people playing. So for example, and it allows us to be quite playful with some of these things, like for example, Ares, god of war, first as featured in a few games before. In our game, they tend an orchard because they've got anger management issues, and they don't have the tools to communicate in the modern world. They can only communicate through acts of heroism or violence. So it's those kind of interesting takes of like looking at the gods of ancient Greece through going, right, well, if they were here today, what issues would they be facing, and how do they relate to us? I think that's important to be able to connect to the characters. We want you to care about these characters. You're befriending them. We want to be able to empathize with them, and having elements where you can go, okay, I can actually, I've noticed that in one of my friends, or someone in my family has been dealing with this. That's that's a really important for you to be able to connect with them on that emotional level. And the game is it's a 3D game. Like as with Rurky, it has this flat shaded style, but you have full freedom to explore in 3D, even more so in Mythwrecked. And one of the things that we're really keen on is, rather than it being exploration, story, that we really kind of interweave the two together. And so we have this idea of topics and the story sandbox. So the idea is that you, as the player, will be running around this island. You'll be exploring new things, and as you examine something that's a new element, say maybe a tower, and you knock on the door and no one answers, a topic will unlock saying "new topic, tower," and then you can go and ask the islanders that you've met about that item. And this direct linking between I'm exploring and now, okay, I've found a new topic, I can ask someone about it. We really want to really mesh together the 3D exploration and story, rather than I'm running around doing adventure stuff and now I'm doing story stuff. and the two are really separate. It's important for us that those two things are integrated. So 3D exploration and story sandbox are really central to this game, and you know, exploration is not just running around. Exploration is you getting information, being able to peel back the layers of the story. So that's something really, you know, really important, really important for us. And we with the exploration as well, we've put a lot of effort into making sure the island is reactive, so that as you're running around, you can run through bushes and they will rustle and leaves will fly up. You can run past urns and you'll hear a pot wobbling sound. And we want our games to feel alive with movement. When I started from university, I worked as an animator and character artist, and we're a very art-led studio. That's our background is in art, and so we tried to make everything really come alive with motion, whether it's foliage undulating in the breeze, whether it's, you know, crabs or lizards, it's everything having a bit of movement. And I think that's I'm always very keen to. The animator's job is to breathe life into things, and that should not stop with characters. The environment itself can, you know, it can be treated like a character, and I think nothing movement, even subtle, layered up subtle movement, really helps bring a game world to life, and it's something that we really try and push. Do you think you can have a game world that is incredibly photorealistic and look amazing, but if the entire thing is static, it will quickly reveal itself to be uh, a fabrication of what it is, as something in a computer. I think our job as creators of games, especially as narrative games, is to convince players to suspend that disbelief. You know, to give them all the cues they need to kind of to be able to remain in this game world, and for it to feel like a, albeit stylized, you know, a real place that their attentions are captivated in, and that's a really important thing. And we do some interesting things around that with in-game help systems as well. And but maybe we'll come on to that one a little bit later. I'll come back to that one. And so next, big adventure, small team. So we've had a reasonable amount of success with our first game. We are a tiny micro studio. So we have like 2 full-time members, and the rest of the time we have collaborators who will maybe do a couple of days a week, varying at different times of the project. And they can be sound designers, composers, voice actors, icon illustrators, but generally, like the people, there's a very small amount of people working full time. So one of the things when we started off is that we want to make games that feel epic. We want to make games that have giant wolves, that can have really epic scenes, and to allow lots of exploration, and just to don't feel like the gameplay experience is compromised. Obviously, we have limitations, and we want to keep a small team, and that then creates these creative limitations. And those limitations are, okay, we want a big epic adventure with lots of scenes and monsters and characters and a great experience, but we have this small team, and so you have these 2 creative limitations. And then part of the interesting thing about being a game designer or a creative director is going, right, well, what is in the middle of these creative limitations? How do we resolve these things? How do we get this and this? And you have to think quite smartly about it, but sometimes it can come up with really interesting solutions. So, for example, the clean, graphical, flat shaded art style of Rurky and of Mythwrecked comes from that, because basically it means that we can concentrate on pure shape and silhouette, and we don't have to do things like traditional lighting, traditional UVing, and we can really focus on motion and silhouette. So being smart in how we're constructing and the techniques and the art styles we're using allows us to make a big adventure with a small team. And I think we're taking that even further with Mythwrecked. Like, all our games have dynamic cameras that follow the player, so the player never has control of the cameras, like third-person camera controls where you can spin them around, which allows us to orchestrate our scenes to those cameras to make sure that we control what the player is seeing. So we don't have to build any of that stuff that's behind the camera. We could just ignore it. So um, there's many like different things that we do to try and give this sense of a very professional commercial game that a team of a much greater size has made with only a small team. I think generally when we tell people the size of the team that made Rookie, people are usually pretty shocked. And I think for us, it's it makes good business sense. Like we it allows us to make games that are weird, a bit odd, a very kind of personal reflection on us as people, and they can be quite um, low risk in a lot of ways because they don't cost as much money to make as if the studio had 20 people, and then we go, oh, we better make sure we sell like 10 times the amount of copies that we have. But yeah, so that's really interesting. I think that kind of helps as well because it means that we can we can make our games pack them full of character. We can make them a little bit weird, a little bit strange. It's almost becomes a selling point. But I think this is something that I definitely recommend. Like creative restrictions and limitations are a way that you can apply to many different things, and you can you can look at your own project and go, right, well, what are my limitations and how can I do that? You might go, right, I want to make the most important thing about my game is I want to make a game about a huge global invasion of aliens. And you go, well, okay, how do I do that? It's going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds if we're doing a huge like World War Z style game where you're running around, you're going to all these different locations all around the world. You can go to any point in the world, anytime, do something there. Or you can go, right, so that's going to be very expensive. Or you go, right, we're going to make a single environment that's like a lighthouse. We're going to have someone who's on a radio, and they're going to be experiencing what's happening, and we're going to tell this global story of alien invasion via a very confined setting. But so that's one way you could look around creative restrictions, and it can produce some really interesting things. So it's definitely something I would recommend going. Um, looking at in your own work or your own projects how you might do it, because it basically allows you to go to not rule things out before you've looked at them properly. So you might go, oh, we can't possibly make this game about a global alien invasion. There's just no way we can do it. So it allows you to keep ideas on the table and go, well, actually, that does sound crazy, like that we could make that. But then you look at it from a different angle, go, right, how could we do that? So creative restrictions and big adventure, small team. It's definitely a really interesting thing to think on. We talked about the DNA of our games earlier, Polygon Treehouse games, and obviously in the past at PlayStation we had worked on a lot of violent games. We worked on a lot of the Killzone series, and I think as we were getting a little bit older and you see everything that's going on in the world, we were really keen to focus on non-violent gameplay. And so Rurky was about meeting creatures of folklore, and rather than being scared of them and stabbing and shooting them, trying to help them with their problems and work out what's going on with them. And again, with Mythwrecked, you're meeting gods, and but rather than going off and going, right, kill 20 orcs to appease them or fight them, you're trying to help them. They've lost their memories. They're struggling. They don't know who they are. They've shut themselves off in different corners of the island and isolated themselves, and they're scared of each other. And so this game is about bringing back their identities, allowing them to reconnect with each other as a family. And there's something really exciting about when you start going, what does a game look like without violence? How do we make it about helping people rather than hurting people? And yeah, it's because we're getting a bit. Oh, I'm definitely getting a bit older now, and so yeah, it's something that that's kind of the type of games that I want to make, that I'm interested in making, and I think that's something that will remain in our games as we carry on making them. And that it doesn't mean your games don't have action. Doesn't mean your games aren't exciting. Like violence is not those things. And you can. There's still going to be lots of fun and lots of action and lots of entertainment. And I think importantly, we are creating entertainment, things to delight people and enthrall them. and I don't think violence has to be a part of that. So, so Adventure for All, one of the things I kind of touched upon very briefly earlier was the suspension of disbelief, and talking about how we wanted to do everything we can to keep the player there, to be looking at their screen and to be with the player character in the game world. And one of the ways we do this is through in-fiction help. And what that means is that basically, if you're, especially with adventure games, which classically people get really stuck at, and they basically just be stuck because there wasn't such a thing as the internet or help guides or walkthroughs, so they'd just be stuck unless they asked a friend and they'd help them. And so you basically might just be stuck forever or for a year. Whereas now with walkthroughs and things, people get less stuck, but that still takes them out of the game. They're going, oh, I'm stuck, I'm frustrated, I don't know how to proceed, and I want to carry on. I'll go and look at this. That's taking them out of the game world. And for story-based games, that's something you want to do at all costs. So we try and have things in our games that provide that help. So the player does within the fiction of the game world. So in Rookie, we had a many-eyed tree that you would go inside and talk to, and they would be able to give you soft guidance within the fiction of the game world to help guide you if you might be stuck. And in Mythwrecked, we have a character called Aura, who is the Oracle. Aura is short for Oracle, and she is a statue that is in front of the main temple, and you meet. She's the first person you meet as you arrive, and she's a statue, but you can ask you can ask lots of questions of her. So if at any point the player is stuck in their adventure, they can go, oh, I'm stuck, rather than going, okay, control down, get on my phone, and at some level of their brain, they'll become very aware that the game is a fabrication, a smoke and mirrors, that they'll be able to go, right, I'll go and ask Aura for help, and you can stay within the fiction of the game world and still get that support that you need. And so that's a kind of really important aspect. The other aspect of Adventure for All is to make our games approachable and accessible. So we don't want games that are super hard that frustrate people. We want our games to provide a challenge, but we want to be able to for people to have a good experience in them. And so that's very much like making sure that in terms of puzzle design, that things aren't too obtuse, that people can have a chance of getting things. That we do a lot of user testing to see how players are getting on with things. I think that's the approachable game design for us is something that's really, really important. And the other aspect of Adventure for All is accessibility, of making sure that people can tailor their play experience to be, as they like, and whether that's by changing like auto progress on. We've got a lot of subtitles in our game, going through what I think people are saying, and so you can choose to progress them by button press, or you can choose to have them auto progress without a button press, and then you can choose the speed of that auto progress. You can change the subtitles to be a darker background with lighter text to be a lighter background with darker text, basically, a light or dark speech bubble. And I think allowing those opportunities for the player to customize their experience is really good, and something that's becoming more and more important. The more and the more we get into some of that stuff, we're looking at adaptive controllers and supporting those. I'm sure many of you will have seen the Microsoft controllers that look like almost like record decks that allow people who struggle with traditional controllers to still be able to play and enjoy games. And looking at the supporting those things and welcoming as many people as we can into our games is really important. And we're that's a big learning experience for us. And I think that's the great thing about making games is you should be learning all the time. Even when you're an old salty sea dog like me, you should, it's really good that you're learning new things each day. And that's what I really enjoy about making games and collaborating with people and making indie games in particular. So there's always new things you can learn and ways that you can make the story of your games better, more engaging, the design, the puzzles of your games more engaging, and also the accessibility and how many people can connect with them. I think it's really important to be always trying to learn new things and to always keep that no matter where you are in your career. And that's, if I was to give one bit of global advice to anyone working in games, it's to always keep that hunger for learning. Don't never think that you know it all, because no one does. And to keep that hunger for learning, and it will stand you in good stead. Always want to learn new things, to be inquisitive, and and to not rest on your laurels, and to keep on learning, keep on growing, and make great games. Okay, so that's the end of our whistle stop tour throughout the game. So I hope you've enjoyed that and it's been informative. So yeah, if there's any questions, we can go through them now.
Thank you very much, Alex, for the presentation. And here's the first question: how does the idea generation work at Polygon?
So generally, we write a lot of stuff down. We write down all our ideas. I'm a big believer in getting stuff out of your brain and onto something to allow you to move on. So we make a lot of lists and write a lot of stuff down. I think that's a really important thing. So I'll personally, I'll find it very hard to move on from go right with here's an idea, here's another idea, unless we have them down on post-it notes or on like I've got a big cork, as a gestures off to the side, we've got a big corkboard over here with all kind of notes on. So that's the kind of one of the main things. And I think that trust your gut as well. I think when we were making Rookie, we had a few different ideas for games and settings. We knew we wanted to make a modern evolution of the classic adventure game. But then when we stumbled across Scandinavian folklore, we had a few ideas we were excited about when we stumbled on that one, and a specific aspect of that and mix of emotions, we both went, "Oh, that was it." It was like a lightning bolt. And we both knew that was the one. But I think another important aspect of idea generation, which we touched a bit on earlier, is creative limitations. Like, there are so many games that you could make, so many. You can make a racing game, a beat 'em up game. There's so many. Anything you can do to narrow down the focus of what ideas you want to do. So you say, actually, my studio, we want to make interesting and innovative beat 'em up games. So let's create ideas here. Or we want to make a romantic car racing game. That's what we want to make. What ideas do we have within here? So I think, rather than going, we can make anything, everything is possible, trying to kind of go, okay, well, why don't we look at this area? This is the area it's interested in, narrowing focus. And I think that's really important as well. Otherwise, your mind will explode with all the possibilities.
Was character customization considered?
In some ways, but we basically, for our games, we like to the characters to be very specific, and also we design our characters as a cast. So we want them to all visually pop against each other and be contrasty against each other, so they can never look too similar. It's important that when you have almost like a superhero team, that when you have a lineup of the characters, they're all have different shapes, different silhouettes, different color schemes. Having character customization doesn't necessarily destroy that, but it does make it more difficult. So we don't have the character customization in Mythwrecked for the cast. It's something we're possibly considering for the player character, but never say never. And the first game is called Mythwrecked Ambrosia Island, and the Mythwrecked universe is something we an area we want to explore. The game has been conceived as the first step into a bigger world of mythology. So yeah, we'll see. Never say never.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. There's a couple of more questions, but I'll ask you to maybe stay here at the backstage and
Sure.
answer them in the chat.
Right. Thank you very much for watching, everyone.